Hey, everybody. This is Mike Sheridan, COO and co-founder at Comparably. I have Matt Vance here from Malouf, who's head of their employee experience manager. And we're going to be talking today about creating an employer reputation plan. We're just going to hold off a couple of minutes while we get other attendees on here and certainly want to, excited to talk to Matt. First off, I think you're all going to enjoy his thoughts and experience as one of the leaders in review management. You'll see at the end of our time here today, he's actually writing the book on this. So gonna be an exciting time to share his knowledge with everyone out there. And thank you for joining us today. Just a few minutes before we get started, I do urge you to ask questions for Matt during this webinar in the Q&A section that should be in the lower bottom of your Zoom screen. Please, if you can, do not put this in chat, although we will monitor that. I do want to make sure that we look in the Q&A side. That's where we're really going to get to questions from our audience about how we can be helping you and your companies with reputation management. So the Q&A is the place to drive those questions. This is going to be a little bit of a unique webinar. Matt is going to be sharing a little bit of a presentation, then we're going to make sure we do get into that Q&A during this time. We're still going to wait just a few more minutes, and thank you all for joining me and Matt Vance from Malouf. I do want to take just a moment, and I think I would be remiss, and both Matt and I have spoken several times over the last few days in not recognizing the current environment. First off, I want to, and I hope everybody attending our webinar today is safe, their friends and families are safe, but I also want to express some personal sentiments, again, for Matt and I, that we want to stand together with our employees, our partners, our customers in this fight against injustice, racism, and inequality. And one of the things that is critical to me as a leader and a role model is to really support the diversity of organizations, not just the diversity of thought, but the diversity in individuals and ethnicity and gender and various other diverse initiatives that I know companies have. And I want to make sure that all of you know that we're doing our piece at Comparably, and I know Matt is in Malouf, and we're going to commit to do more as we always look to improve our organizations to make them better, and we know that more diverse organizations make that happen. All right, just another moment here, and we're going to get started. Matt, excited to talk to you today. Creating an employer reputation plan. I'd love to just start this off and talk very quickly about Matt's background. So first off, if you don't know Malouf, right, they are one of the #1 sellers of mattresses through a number of brands on Amazon. They are in 22,000 or 15,000 retail stores, I believe, Matt, in 22 different countries. They really own the category across the web on the sleep products, and not just mattresses, but a number of others. I don't know about many of you. I'm not getting enough sleep these days, which is fairly typical with 3 kids. But really, Malouf is definitely an excellent place to go for your sleep products and to help you out there. Matt is also a winner, and if you can advance here, in the 2019 Stevie Award for running a best customer feedback strategy. He is truly one of the greats when it comes to review management. And the thing that's interesting, at least for the TA community, and this is why I wanted to have Matt on, is we've always talked about brand in a company and the talent brand and how they were converging over time. And as COO and co-founder of Comparably, and Matt, head of now employee experience, he came over from the customer and reputation management side. He's now a 2020 HR professional, where Malouf is based in Utah, and they have other regions around the country where their distribution centers are. He's an avid user, not just of Comparably, but Glassdoor, Indeed, in her site. So you're going to see some practices that are used across the employee experience. And as I said early on in the introduction, Matt is writing the book on review management that, he hopes to complete towards the end of this year. And we'll make sure even everybody on this webinar, I hope I can give free copies out, Matt, and I'll certainly buy a number of those. Before we jump into Matt's topic, just a quick overview. We're going to be talking from Matt's standpoint for about the next 30 minutes or so on really some practices that he put into place, and he's going to lay out the goals here. If you have questions, please put them into the Q&A portion of Zoom so that we can start asking those when we have time for Q&A. And I'm going to make sure that I get to as many of them as possible to pick Matt's brain through this as well. And otherwise, Matt and I are just so excited that you're all here to join us. I think this is an important webinar talking about reputation management always, but certainly in this time of the economic, business, and social environment. So I'm going to leave it now to you, Matt, and head in here and give this audience, a lot of the thoughts and knowledge that you have from experience over time.
Well, thank you so much for the intro, Mike. It's sure exciting to be here with everybody virtually. And I would definitely echo the same sentiment of Mike that there's a lot of craziness happening in the world right now. And I too just hope everyone is safe and that we can come together and spread kindness for sure. So with that, we'll go ahead and use this time to the best of our advantage. I'd like to start off by giving you a little bit of perspective from my lens and where things are coming from, so you can best interpret the information that you're hearing today. So I started at Malouf in 2014. At that time, there were about 40 employees. It was a smaller company. And we had products on Amazon.com and Amazon CA. And I was hired to be the review guy, just to figure everything out with reviews, to help us get more reviews, to learn from them. And from there, I was just basically set loose to figure things out. And over the next about 4.5 years, the company scaled, and I scaled our review efforts to the point where we were on 50 different e-commerce platforms, managing about 1,500 product listings, and we were getting over 380 reviews per day. Through some practices and some of the things that you'll be learning today, we were able to increase our category star average over 250,000 reviews by 0.15 stars, which is significant with that big of a sample size. So as that happened, I was recognizing the power of leveraging customer feedback to help us innovate our products faster and make a better customer experience for our customers. And I recognized that some of these methodologies crossed over to other types of feedback, including employee feedback. So as early as 2016 is when I started opening the employer branding profiles for Malouf. Glassdoor was the first one that we started, and then we branched out from there with Indeed, and then In Her Site and Comparably came soon after that. And we have definitely seen very similar effects with review management on the customer side and the employer side. We've been able to get some of our products up to #1 best-selling status on Amazon, Walmart.com, Overstock, and a whole bunch of other platforms. And conversely, on the employer side, we've been able to tell the true story of what's happening on the employee experience. And Malouf has now been ranked 7 times as the national best place to work. So that's a little bit of context of where I'm coming from. So to set kind of the goals for today, I'm going to start off by sharing a little bit more perspective of the impact that reviews have in general and consumer behavior. And then I'm going to give you 5 specific action items that you can take away to get started today. And we'll go through some Q&A. Now, with all the things that are happening in 2020, now really is the time to focus on these efforts. I truly believe this because we're going into a new future of work with new norms where employees are realizing that their experience matters. Some companies have responded favorably to some of the things that are happening, and some haven't. And employees' eyes are being opened to the fact that, hey, you know, like, I'm seeing the true colors of these organizations, and I want to work somewhere that cares for me individually. And so we need to be able to tell the true story of our employers and be able to leverage a positive employee experience to attract top talent and proceed forward in success as we go into the future of work. So let's get started with giving some context to reviews. The power of reviews. I'm guessing if we were all in an audience and I asked you to raise your hand, you know, who uses reviews? A lot of you would raise your hand. There's a lot of reasons why we reference reviews, whether it's, you know, what type of vacuum we want to buy online, where we want to go for dinner, or where we want to go on vacation, at least when all of this is over. There's a lot of different applications to reviews, but the fact is almost everyone uses reviews for different types of decisions. The amount of influence that reviews have is what is so impactful. 85% of consumers trust online reviews as much as a personal recommendation. Now, there was a research study performed by HubSpot where they looked at the trustworthiness factor of different individual professionals. And at the top of the list were doctors. Doctors were trusted at a rate of 49%. So on average, one person would believe 1 out of 2 doctors. All the way at the bottom, you've got salespeople and marketers trusted at a 3% rate, and then politicians at 1%. If there are any HR professionals watching here today, you guys weren't on that study, so you're off the charts in one direction or the other. You'll have to decide there. But it's just crazy that influence can be so different in this way. Like, individuals have a certain amount of influence. Like, let's say I was a salesperson, you know, I'm working for Vance Refrigeration. I'm trying to sell you a fridge. And I say, hey, this fridge, this is my favorite. It has these cool features. You know, I'm going to be able to influence you at that 3% rate because, you know, you're probably perceiving me to be biased. I'm trying to sell you something, probably the one that has the biggest margin because, you know, we're somewhat self-serving in that sense. But as soon as I change my communication to say, this fridge is our #1 bestseller. It has over 3,000 reviews and a 4-point star rating. All of our customers, or most of them, are highly satisfied with this model. All of a sudden, the trustworthiness goes up to 85%. And so using reviews to tell the story of whatever story you're trying to tell, whether it's selling a product or showcasing your employee experience of your company, it's much more influential. So let's look at a couple examples when it comes to consumer impact. On Yelp, a 1-star change in a star rating will impact a local business to the tune of 5 to 9% on their gross revenue. That's a permanent impact for as long as the star rating has changed. It's not just like a 1-day change or a 1-month change. It's a permanent impact that happens. On Amazon, the difference in sales between a 4.2 star product and 4.3 star product is 100%. And it happens in real time. I've seen this over and over again. Now, the reason for this is Amazon rounds their star rating. So 4.2 rounds down to 4 filled stars, and a 4.3 rounds up to 4.5 filled stars. And that's kind of the magic bubble of where the highest amount of trustworthiness happens, is that 4.5 star mark. So next time you're ready to write a negative review for someone, think about the impact it can have. Even one negative review on Yelp can cost a business 30 customers. So there's a high amount of influence that reviews and reviewers can have on business. So let's look at some of the mechanics. Why is this happening? Why are reviews so impactful? There are 2 main reasons. The first one being the quantity of reviews on a listing. The law of diminished returns is happening here. When you go from 0 reviews to 1 review, your conversion rate will lift by about 10%. And then as you go up to all the way up to 200 reviews, you've got a lift of about 44% on your conversion rate. This study comes from Bazaar Voice. They're an e-commerce review management company. The next study is by KTH Technology Institute in Sweden. And they evaluated the sales rates of a whole bunch of different products on Amazon at different star ratings. And you can see As the bubbles go up vertically, more sales are happening, and the increase in sales is following those half-star increments. You have very little sales, almost none, to 3 stars. Between 3 and 3.5 goes up a little bit. When you hit that 4-star rounding mark, you hit a new level of sales, and then when you hit that 4.5 star is your peak amount of sales. So when you look at star ratings and number of reviews, you can basically see which listings are optimized for reviews and which ones aren't. So if I were to browse a catalog of our products, I would pick a product that had 4.5 star rating and over 200 reviews, and that would be a listing that I would choose to promote on Amazon with like a daily deal or something, because it will have a higher amount of sales potential based on the optimized reviews. So why is this? Why is it that reviews are so impactful? Why do we buy more stuff when we see good reviews? Why do we believe it? Well, it really comes down to perception. If you've heard of Lee Atwater, he was the presidential campaign manager to George W. Bush Sr., and he coined this term, perception is reality. He fundamentally changed the way that presidential campaigns are run in the US. Instead of trying to push a certain agenda to a political issue, he would first measure the sentiment of the population and take the majority side. Instead of trying to change perceived reality, he would accept it and embrace it and go with it. Now, we see this in consumer behavior with both reviews and job seekers alike. And here's just a super quick example. Say you go to a restaurant, it's an amazing experience, the waiters are awesome, the food is fantastic, you had a short wait time, 5-star review. You post your review, you walk away, and then you don't think anything of it. A week goes by and you're talking to a friend and they say, oh, you went to that restaurant? Well, did you hear they were actually fined because they were negligent with hygiene and several of their employees had COVID? That would probably change your perception of that restaurant. But at the time when you wrote your review, it didn't matter. You didn't know about that, and so it didn't impact your perceived reality. So really, when it comes to reviews, the subset of information that we're exposed to impacts our beliefs and our actions as well. On average, consumers read about the top 6 reviews when they read. So don't worry about every single review mattering that much, just the top most visible ones. So with this in mind, we need to redefine our success metrics. Reviews are the currency of online success, and your stars precede dollars. And so you need to be mindful of your ratings and your reviews. So let's talk about how does this translate to the employer branding world? How do reviews impact job seekers? So you're seeing a similar impact here. 92% of working Americans consider employee reviews to be important. And a lot of people don't want to work at companies that they perceive to have a negative culture or that they have negative reviews. And a lot of times when jobs are declined, it can be sourced back to the reading of negative reviews. Now, we don't just want to have good employer reviews. We want to actually have reviews because it's a result or a reflection of reality. We want to have good culture, and we want our reviews to mirror that reality. Now, if you do have good culture, you can expect some pretty awesome benefits. Happy employees are more productive. They're less likely to voluntarily quit, and they have a second degree impact on your success because they'll treat your customers better and they'll have higher customer satisfaction ratings. In fact, there have been quite a few robust studies about the connection between positive company culture and profitability. Glassdoor did a study in 2015 where they evaluated ROI of best place to work companies, and they just barely redid this study a couple months ago, and they looked at 11 years of data between 2009 and 19 and found that best place to work companies outperformed the S&P by 7.9%. With compounded interest over 11 years, you can just about double your investment with best place to work companies. So let's take a quick step back. Culture is one of those things that's talked about a lot. It's posted about a lot on LinkedIn. It's kind of a buzzword, like, oh, we have good culture, we have a good vibe, you know, the human experience, there's all this cool stuff happening. But what is culture? And how can we affect it? Well, from the larger perspective, culture is the social norms of societies and communities and groups. It's a way of life, or just the norms that are present in a group. So company culture, and I'm going to read this definition here from Investopedia. It says, corporate culture refers to the belief and behaviors that determine how a company's employees and management interact and handle outside business transactions. And this part's really interesting. So you've got the two players, the employees and the management. Often corporate culture is implied, not expressly defined, and develops organically over time from a cumulative trait, the cumulative traits of people and the company hires. So you've got specific groups in place, employees and the employer. I think it's a little, it's sad to see when people swing so hard on the human experience side that they miss that there still is a business component to company culture, that employees are there for a paycheck, they have needs that they're fulfilling, and the employer, same thing, they need that human talent to be able to continue their business development. But it doesn't have to be passive, as this definition says. We all have culture, whether we acknowledge it or not, but we can take control of it. And one example is Kronos. The CEO of Kronos, Aaron Ian, he wrote a book called Work Inspired. The title is actually the way they have branded their culture. Those two words, work inspired. On the employer side, work inspired means that they are committed to creating a workplace worthy of inspiration. There's psychological safety and support and the resources you need to succeed. And on the employee side, it's a commitment to work inspired, to bring your best self to work, to share your ideas, to work hard and be committed to your tasks. And so there's a mutual respect and acknowledgement of those different roles within the unique culture of a business. So we understand that culture is social norms. We want reviews that reflect a positive company culture. How do we control our company culture and shape it to be better? You know, that's going to equate to better reviews and create a positive cycle of positivity on the outside and the inside of your organization. Really what that is creating a company culture strategy. You know, instead of having, say, an open door policy for feedback, which is very passive, saying, hey, yeah, we're open to feedback, be purposeful with your feedback and have an employee feedback strategy that's defined. At Malouf, we have an anonymous suggestion box. We also do annual employee engagement surveys. And then we strategically ask for reviews on the 4 different platforms that we have profiles on: Comparably, Glassdoor, Indeed, and in her site. And that's part of our feedback strategy. Now, when you're designing your company culture strategy, you need to consider the players in your culture, how you're going to define success, and how you're going to measure it. We unfortunately don't have time to dive into everything on the larger discussion of company culture, but we will be focusing on the reputation plan within company culture. So that's where you're going to get your 5 action items specific to that outward component of your culture strategy, the reputation plan. So we will go forward, and to sum up the employee reputation plan, it's primarily shaping job seekers' perceptions of you as an employer. But you also want to acknowledge that all these other players in your company culture are observing this interaction with job seekers. Your employees will be looking at your reviews, and they probably do already. Customers, their opinions are shaped by reviews of your company, because what else will they have to judge you by? Investors, partners, and others as well. So let's dive into the 5 action items.
Matt, just before you dive in here and look, you know, I think the piece that Matt's talking about when you talk about reviews as the digital online currency, as Matt and I know, right? This is why, and I know we use the word control, and I think we even talked about it yesterday. It's really reflect, right? What's going on in a culture, in a company, and making sure that you have a diversity of places out there, the SEO strategy that comes with it, all of the different pieces. Exciting time to really dig into kind of the 3 steps here that Matt's going to lay out. We're already getting a bunch of Q&A coming in, some of it very strategic for Matt at the end of this, some of it very tactical that I even asked Matt the same questions when he and I converse regularly. So please add your questions to the Q&A. Matt's going to get to that here in the next 15 minutes or so. So we're going to continue now, Matt, but ask your questions in Q&A so that we can have a lively discussion at the end of this. Thanks, Matt.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you, Mike. And whatever we don't happen to hit, I'm happy to hit some messages after the event. So the first action item, consider your employer branding options. You've got quite a few different places where you can be judged for your employer reputation. The biggest, you've got Glassdoor, Comparably, Indeed, InHerSite, Fairy Godboss. Those are all specific to employer ratings. Yelp, Google, and Facebook, I would consider those secondary importance. They're not measuring you explicitly on how good of an employer you are. It's more of a general rating that you could have reviews there from all sorts of different types of parties. But the average consumer does look at 10.4 different data sources before making a purchase decision. And so I would say the same crosses over for job seekers and others. You want to have a diversified reputation. Just like you diversify your financial investments, you should diversify your reputation. The stars should precede the dollar signs. And so there's a lot of similarities there that you should draw. So as you're looking at these different sites, you've got the links here on where to start your profiles. Don't worry about writing that down. We can get the slides out later. But the thing that you do want to think about is as you're starting these profiles, or if you already have profiles on these sites, who should be contributing to managing them and why? We have a team that contributes to the management of Malouf's profiles. Here's kind of how I would break it down. All of the different profiles you can post just like social media. So having someone from marketing or social to help with that is good. You should be very active in responding to reviews. And so someone from copy or HR is good. Strategizing the overall content and presentation of the brand itself would be a brand manager, HR, or if you're an awesome company that has someone dedicated to employer branding, then that's kind of their space. And then interpreting the feedback. This is a huge one. You want to be able to data mine all of that information you're getting from reviews. So your resident Excel wizard or an analytics team, or maybe even a software dev group can help you with that. I'm going to go back for just one sec here. One other thing I would say, if you're feeling a little overwhelmed, like, oh man, I have to have all these profiles, start with one. If you're starting from ground zero, pick one to start. Just like investing, learn the ropes first and then add. We at Malouf, we started with just Glassdoor and then built from there. We now have over 500 employees, and so we have enough employees to support the review needs because you want a constant review feed to all of those. And so we systematically ask all of our employees to post on all 4 now, but we've worked up to that. So if you're wondering like which one is good to start on, here's just a couple things that I like about each of the platforms. Glassdoor, it currently has the highest traffic for review research specifically. Indeed is where a lot of the job applications are happening, and your star ratings actually post directly on every job that you post. So if you haven't been paying attention to your reviews and you have a 2-star rating on your company, and every time you post a review, that 2 stars is sitting right at the top, right by the job title, which is something that you want to manage. InHerSite is awesome for the female friendliness in the workplace. It's one that we definitely believe in and are excited about. And Comparably, there's 2 big reasons why I love Comparably specifically. They're the only platform that has verified employee reviews. You have the ability with partnering with Comparably to control the message a little bit. All the others, you're exposed to potential review manipulation, which does happen in the consumer review world, and it's gotten more sophisticated and a lot of monitoring is happening. I'm seeing that same trend shift a little bit over to the employer review space. Just last year, Wall Street Journal wrote an article about review manipulation on Glassdoor. So it can happen, and Comparably is ahead of the curve on that one, which is exciting. And then the other big one is they have quarterly awards. Glassdoor only has 2 per year. Having 4 awards every quarter with Comparably gives you a lot of press opportunity, which is really positive. Okay, so we hit that piece. Now let's go on to number 2, ask for reviews. You want to ask for reviews. It may seem scary, but the law of self-selecting extremes is going to be your friend. Now, when you don't ask for reviews, someone either has to have an overly negative or overly positive experience to be motivated enough to go out of their way to share feedback in a review. As soon as you start asking, those extremes, they come from here and they get smaller because you've made it easier for them to take that action. And most people are more on the positive side. On Amazon, the average star rating is 4.27 stars. Amazon asks for reviews from all their customers. And so they've been able to harness the power of the self-selecting positive feedback. And you can do the same as you start asking for reviews. If you know that you have work to do on the culture side and you're still nervous about it, start with an internal only employee engagement survey. See what you're doing good and what you're not doing good. Commit to transparency and start publicly showing to your employees that you're addressing some of those things that were uncovered in that survey. And once you've started building a cycle of trust internally, then you can turn on that external feedback loop and start asking for reviews on your platforms. We're going to go through a couple of specific do's and don'ts. So, asking for reviews. Do ask small groups on a rotation. Don't ask all your employees at once. I mean, if you were to go shopping on Amazon and you saw a listing that had 100 reviews and they were all a year old, your BS radar probably goes off, right? It looks fishy. And you don't want your reviews on your profile to look like that. You just want a natural appearing, constant flow of feedback. And that's beneficial for you too, from an analytics side, getting a constant flow of feedback. So the way that we do it is ours is systemized. Now, I used to manually track who I'd asked in Excel and just send out a group BCC email every couple weeks. And now our analytics team has written a macros that just randomly selects some of our employees every 13 days. So that goes on with the second one. Make your request randomized. You don't want to just cherry pick people that you think are going to be happy. That will certainly backfire on you if people hear that you're doing it that way. Like it just doesn't work. You want true authenticity, and as Mike said, you want to mirror the reality of your culture. It's going to save you some time to make a template. Employee A doesn't see what you're asking employee B, so you can use the same verbiage on a review request email, but you don't want to tell your employees what to say. You want to encourage honesty. You should track who you've asked. You don't want to track who said what. That's a dangerous road to go down. And even if you figure out who said what are you going to do knowing who wrote a negative review? There's really nothing you can do. And it really shouldn't offend you. A negative review is still a gift because someone was willing to tell you what's not going good so that you can address it. You do want to offer support in an email request asking for reviews, like say, hey, if you have technical issues or questions about why we're doing this, feel free to talk to us, but don't incentivize that participation. On some of the platforms, it's against terms of service and can jeopardize your profile. I would, at least what we do is we mark these emails as important, and we CC Sam, our CEO, on all these emails. So he sees that it's going out and that employees see that this is really important. And we do send a scheduled follow-up to help increase participation.
Matt, if I could just jump in here, this is one place where you and I mean, you actually, before we ever started working together, you came back to us with suggestions about what we needed to do to make Comparably better. And, you know, I think even through that discussion, one of the things that we've known and how we've helped customers, even like Zoom video communications, Ring Central, and of course, you know, Matt, I know you're working with us even further to get even more depth of Malouf on Comparably. There's often been this thing of, as you said, asking is difficult, right? And even Zoom Video Communications, who had been on Glassdoor for 7 years and had 250 reviews, that in 48 hours working with us at Comparably, they had 240 employees give feedback, verified, employees about their experience at Zoom. How do you think about, and we'll get into the questions later, but this taking time to leave reviews and that why for employees is sometimes difficult for them to see. And I know you talked about randomizing your requests and making the request template, but how are you giving folks the why, or what do you recommend folks to give them the why so that employees are taking time during their day to do that? One example is you did make it a leadership piece that is supportive of this, and putting a CEO to ask or on the CC line is really important in communicating that. But is there something else that you might recommend on that why?
Well, I think it's just evidence that we're using it. We have weekly company meetings and we report on feedback that we're getting and change that's taking place because of that feedback. And that in turn builds trust. And so employees realize that their feedback actually makes a difference. If you're really not going to attempt to make change with your feedback, then you'll maybe get some minimal participation, but eventually your cycle will just kind of dry up. You need to be exemplifying that you're committed to the feedback, and that's going to increase their commitment to giving the feedback as well. So
Thanks,
I would say it's a cycle. It's an ongoing thing.
Yeah, thanks. Helpful.
So this is just a quick example of our review template at Malouf. We've got an awesome in-house graphic design team that custom branded this. We're setting the expectations of how long it's going to take to participate, how often they're going to see these review requests come through. On Comparably, Glassdoor, and Indeed, each individual can review a company once every 12 months. And so our cycle is every 13 months, we're going to make you eligible again to be included for a random selection on one of these requests. So on to the number 3 recommendation, and that's responding to reviews. So now you're getting reviews on your profile, you've got everything set up. How do you start engaging with your reviewers? Now, it's definitely beneficial to do this. You can see the stats here. 62% of job seekers have improved perceptions when employers are responding. So even if you have a negative review, you can flip that to a positive by taking the time to reply. And a lot of people are expecting companies to be responding, and it does make a difference. So one of the biggest benefits is increasing transparency and trust among your job seekers. They see that you're active and engaged, and all those other parties, the customers, the current employees, partners, they're observing your interactions with these individuals. This is just a screenshot example of an Amazon review where someone wrote a 1-star review. We came on and offered to help with one of our other brands, Linen Spa, and then a random shopper came on and said, the response to this review is what was helpful to me. The company seems very willing to back up their product, which gave me purchasing confidence. There have been multiple examples of this throughout the reviews. So we consistently respond to our reviews, and this is the kind of trust that we're able to harness from shoppers and job seekers alike. So here's some pro tips about review responses. I've personally written over 1,200 pages in Word of review responses and trained quite a few different people on this. So we've learned from trial and error, so you're getting years worth of pro tips here on this part. But the first one is consider your target audience. It seems counterintuitive, but you're not writing to the reviewer. You're not. On Amazon, as an example, we have some listings that get over 60,000 views a day. I'm certainly going to be tailoring my response to a review to those people more than the individual person that's already gone through the purchase cycle and they're done. The same would be true on employer reviews when Maybe it's a past customer or a past employee and they've, wrote a negative review, they're out, it's fine. You want to publicly demonstrate your care to that individual, but thinking about the target audience and how they're perceiving this interaction that you're having with this person. Imagine that you're on stage with this person, but you care about your TV ratings, right? So response volume, how many reviews should you be responding to and which ones? Cornell University did a study about the impact of TripAdvisor ratings when brands responded to various volumes of their reviews. And what they found was the TripAdvisor score could more than double when they were responding to about 40% reviews. As they started to respond to more, you get up to 80% review response rate and you're back down to 0. You've made no impact on your TripAdvisor score. And as you approach 100% review responses, you're actually damaging your TripAdvisor score. Now, I interpret that to be that reviews are somewhat of a social media space and we don't want to wear out our welcome. We want to be involved, but we also want to let the community engage with the community. And so my rule of thumb is respond to all negative reviews. Anything that's 3 stars or less, respond to all inquisitive reviews. So that would be any star rating, but there's a question or something that's uncertain that you can clarify. And then some of your positives, maybe 1 to 2 per page. A standard review page is 10 reviews. Now, a couple other pro tips: don't use templates. It's not appropriate in this space. This is a public-facing communication, and someone could scroll through all your review responses, and that's really going to discredit your efforts if you just have said the same thing to 5 people in a row. You also want to always take the conversation off the platform. Invite them to email you or call you to continue the conversation if they need additional support. So let's go into a couple pro tips for negative reviews. These are my 2 favorites, and in the book I'm working on, I've got several more, but these are the ones that are going to make the biggest difference. You want to use strategically positive and negative words. This is more of a subliminal level of influence. If someone's writing something negative, you want to mirror what they've said to showcase that you're an actual human on the other side listening to what's being written, but you also don't want to unnecessarily reinforce the negative. So if someone were to say, "We're sorry," or someone's like, "I had a horrible experience at Malouf. It was the worst employer I've ever had." You could say, "We're sorry you had a horrible experience at our company," or you could tone it down just a little bit while still mirroring the message and say, "We're sorry that the experience you've had at work wasn't what you expected." On the flip side, you can leverage positive things as well. If someone says work is awesome, you could say, "We're glad that you feel working at Malouf is awesome." You can own the positives and then minimize the negatives. The next pro tip is discrediting negative claims. As the moderator of your profile, it's your responsibility to stand for truth and what is actually real. You want to shape those perceptions, shape the perceived reality that people are having with genuine information. So here's an example. I interviewed someone that managed reviews for a dentist office to join my team at one point. Someone in a negative review had said the dentist threw something across the room. They were so mad they threw something. It's crazy. The thing is, it didn't happen. It wasn't true. And I asked this person, "Well, how did you respond to the review?" And they said, "Well, I said, sorry, we're going to make this right. We're going to take good care of you. We'll give you free teeth whitenings." Well, what would you think if you were the person reading that review and then the reply? Would you think that it happened? Most likely you would. You passively agreed with it because you didn't confront the situation. Instead, you should discredit that negative claim. You should say, "We're sorry that you had a bad experience. After verifying with multiple people that were present at the time of your appointment, we have confirmed that nothing was thrown across the room. However, we can see that you've had a bad experience and we would like to address that and find a resolution for you. Please email us here and we can take care of that for you." Now, we can do that, and it's okay to call people out, but you want to be nice and strategic with your wording. Okay, so responding to positive reviews. Don't just say thank you. You don't want to be template based. You want to actually mirror the message and say, repeat something that they've said to show that you're a human on the other side. Find ones that are short and specific that you can mirror the message, and ones that are really recent because they're more visible. I would say don't respond to your all-star positives. That would be one that's like really detailed, or maybe it has a photo of your office or something like that. Let those ones stand alone and speak for themselves. Respond to the ones that are just short and brief and concise. And then responding to inquisitives, any review that has a question you should answer. So let's cruise through these last two here, learning from your reviews. So now you're getting all these reviews, you're asking for them, you're engaging with your reviews, you're responding. Now, how can you harness all the data from these reviews to make actionable changes in your organization? There's two main suggestions I would give. The first is comparisons to your competition. Comparably has a pretty cool feature where you can compare your ratings and reviews, even your CEO approval ratings and a whole bunch of other metrics to any company on the platform. Use that to your advantage. Be familiar with other platform or other companies in your local labor market and others that you compete with for talent. And that's going to help you know what your job seekers are benchmarking you against. You want to be aware of those perceptions that are out there in the community. And then the second type of analysis, this is the big one, leveraging the actual reviews. Now, there are a lot of different software services out there that will analyze the text for you. You can do an Excel export from Comparably and Glassdoor and the other sites, and give your Excel file with all your reviews to a software provider that can then do a text analysis and help you interpret the feedback on a mass volume. My favorite is Merit CX. It was previously called In Moments, or you can look on G2 Crowd and Capterra and do a review search of software companies, software providers in the text analysis space. If you're going to do this manually, open up Excel, start reading the reviews and count mentions. So if someone mentions PTO, they say, the vacation time is awesome. Tag that as PTO and it's positive, label it green. If someone says, we don't have enough vacation time, tag that as PTO in a separate line, tag it red for negative. And go on and read through your reviews, tagging all these mentions. One review could mention 5 different things, and you want to count them individually because they're different topics. After you've read through all your reviews this way, that's where the magic happens. You can click sort, and you can see what is the most positive at the top, what's the most negative at the bottom. And right in front of your eyes, you'll have your cultural competitive advantages and where you need to improve. And those are the things that you start taking action on. Now, it may sound daunting to read all your reviews, but I have personally not found a substitute that is as good as reading. A lot of the gold nuggets that I find are from actually reading the reviews. And it takes time, but it's a worthwhile commitment. So after you've uncovered these awesome data points, you can now reverse engineer your profile content to speak to those cultural competitive advantages. So like here, you see these labels of leadership, culture, environment, values, foundation. Those are things that came through our reviews and our employee engagement surveys, of things that Malouf is good at. And now we're putting those on our employer profiles. So when job seekers are looking at those things, they're more likely to be aligned with us as an organization if those things are appealing to them. You've probably heard the term, cultural fit. Oh, we didn't hire them because they weren't the best cultural fit. Well, now you can actually assign what that means through data. You can see if these topics resonate with people, and those are real tangible things that have been quantified. And this is just a quick hit that you can do the same thing with internal feedback loops like a suggestion box or an engagement survey. The Inc. magazine does a best place to work contest that doubles as an engagement survey. That one's in February if you're looking for that. Okay, last action item, broadcast your reviews. Now you've got your profiles up and running, you've got a cycle for asking for reviews, you've got a pattern of responding to your reviews every day, you're checking your profiles, you're leveraging your reviews for new learning points. Now make your reviews work for you. Use that content. One example, like a Facebook ad that has reviews in it will have 4 times the click-through rate as traditional market messaging. It's because consumers trust other consumers. It's that 85% trust factor that reviews have. You want to use this content to tell your story instead of telling your story yourself. So here's some do's and don'ts. Do refer job seekers to your employer profiles. Be transparent, be open. Let them go see what people are saying, the good and the bad. Don't be afraid of the bad. People expect to see some bad. It helps validate the positive. It sets the tone of authenticity, and it's okay.
Matt, if I could just jump in here, I think this is a place that companies struggle with so mightily. Oftentimes they do a lot of work and they get their pages up, they get some reviews, and then they get kind of stopped at this part about where to market the employee reviews. And one of the key reasons why we built that recruitment marketing library that and can use on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter instantly. It takes the need away from a design team where companies may have to go to marketing for these assets. But one of the things that when you talk about marketing employer brand, I think, I have really recommended to folks is, and just curious on yours, one, we have a job seeker report that you can actually send directly to job applicants and people in your talent funnel, which is really easy for them to get that background. But this is really critical when it comes to putting this on your website and on your job descriptions, right? Yep. To showcase the awards that you won, the type of culture that you have, what your employees are saying, and including that in actual your job ads and on your career site and star widgets. And I know you guys do this really well, Matt. How effective have you found that to be coming over from the consumer side to the talent side?
Well, I would say a lot of it crosses over. I mean, you're looking at the same principles of feedback. Third-party validation is what has the highest influence, whether it's a review or an award. It's both of those are coming from someone else, an unbiased third party. And so when you can shine the spotlight on that message instead of shining the spotlight on yourself, it's a lot more powerful. And so linking to your employer profiles on your career page and showcasing employer related awards, it says a lot more. It's a lot more influential than saying, hey, we believe we're a good place to work.
Yeah. Got it. Thanks.
Yeah, you bet. That's a great question. Just a couple other tips here. So, you do want to market those awards. I would say though, be cautious of, you don't want to overshare, and you don't want to quote ratings and metrics that can be volatile or that can change a lot. I saw a poster of a company that said, 98% of our companies or our employees like working here. How's that for a catchy marketing slogan? To me, that comes off a little inauthentic. And if I worked there, I would somewhat feel used, like I was a vehicle for sending the company's message. My personal take is you don't want to quote specific numbers that can change, but just send people to those profiles. Say, check us out on Comparably and see for yourself what employees are saying. That message can never get outdated. You never have to update it. It's always authentic. It's always up to date and current. And then, you can encourage your employees to share. When you win an award, post about it on LinkedIn, post about it on internal social media, on Slack or Teams or wherever you communicate, and encourage them to share it. And a lot of times they will. So here's just some visual examples. Down in the corner, you see like one of these Comparably widgets that you can pre-build in their software, which is really cool. You can see like links on a career page. You can put reference your employer profiles on like an employment card or on a banner at a career fair. There are lots of different creative applications that you could use to reference these. But the main theme is you want to embrace transparency and you want to incorporate your profiles in as many places as you can. So if you want some examples of what Malouf is doing, feel free to follow us on all of our different profiles and keep up with the company. And feel free to connect and contact me if you have any questions. But that's pretty much all I had.
All right, Matt. Thanks so much for going through that. That was a ton of content. really to walk through that. And I know everybody appreciated given all of the participants that we have on. We do have some Q&A from the folks. I'm going to try and get to as much of it as possible in the next few minutes. But I've got a lot of users, both Courtney and Carrie Kidwell. Courtney, I believe, from Improvata, Carrie Kidwell from Trove. What do you use for your anonymous suggestion box right now at Malouf, and what product are you using for your internal pulse surveys?
Okay, yeah. So we thought about building it in-house, building a suggestion box in-house, but there were concerns about perceived genuineness of anonymity. And so we decided to outsource that, and we use a software called Suggestion Ox. So like the animal ox, like take off the bee and a box becomes a big strong animal. But yeah, that one's $50 a month. It's really cheap for the $50 is their premium service. But the thing that I like about their software is you can actually respond directly to the person who submitted anonymous feedback and have an email chain back and forth. And like we post suggestions that get implemented internally, so everyone can see what suggestions made it to implementation. But if something is inappropriate or it doesn't go to implementation, we want to still be able to give a resolution to the person that submitted it, and that software makes it possible.
Cool, Matt, thanks for that. We've got a question from Sterling Company. And Sterling, this is something that I talk with companies all the time about. What's the best way, Matt, that you found to get great employees leaving feedback, online reviews about the company without showing nepotism or crossing the line in online review integrity? I know this is something we work with folks all the time. One of the ways we've tried to solve that is very similar to yours. First, this isn't something that I typically say, hey, send out to the entire organization. This is something that you want to scale into over time to keep a bit of the freshness. I think also we have tools that makes it really easy for them to leave feedback. Matt, it's a link to a 2 or 3 minute survey to give feedback. We've also built a Slack tool and a Microsoft Teams tool that makes it easy for people to leave feedback where they do that work. But I think one of the keys, Sterling, that we found in this is you've got to go hit hiring managers and brand ambassadors and leaders in organization and get their close group of folks to leave that feedback and drive that responses. Oftentimes, they're the ones that are, a little bit more of the cheerleaders in the organization. They're not going to typically pick and choose just the great people, but they can lead driving that feedback strategy a bit. And we've found that is a great way for companies to really get that feedback generating and get, I'd say a bit more of that positive sentiment driven by some of the leaders in an organization to leave that feedback. I don't know what you found there, Matt.
No, I like that. And the only thing I would add is I would say be consistent. Whatever type of methodology you're going to use for randomly selecting your employees, try to not change it unless there's a real reason. So maybe you just want to go by tenure. You sort all of your employees by tenure. You start with the oldest employees and you go down the list. And then when you've hit everyone and a year has passed, you start over and you go down the list again. No one can argue with that. It's like the alphabet. Instead of saying this department's more important than this, it's like you can't argue with alphabetical order or tenure. It's pretty well defined. So just pick something, whether it's tenure, alphabetical order by last name, or something simple like that.
Matt, just a couple more here. Someone asked, I noticed that Amazon is doing more verified buyer reviews. Do you see this as being the future of employee reviews?
I hope so. You follow Amazon and their review updates, it's been a wild ride. We could talk for a long time about the dark world of reviews and how much manipulation goes into it. There's a lot of money on the line, and so people are willing to do a lot of dirty things. It gets crazy fast, but I think as time goes on, we will realize, or as a society we'll realize the impact that employer reviews have on ROI and companies, and people will try to game the system more and more. And so out of necessity, I foresee an increased level of sophistication in review monitoring and on the platform side. So I'm being genuine here. I mean, I've done partnerships with all the 4 different profiles that I mentioned. I've been a beta tester of Indeed. I've been on lots of feedback calls with Glassdoor and with the CEO at In Her Site. But the one thing that sets Comparably apart is the fact that they've been the first to take a step towards verified purchase of employer reviews.
Thanks for the plug, Matt. That's exactly why I helped start the company, is because we thought that needed to change and get people real reviews from actual verified real people that are there. So
yep.
Important part of us. Couple other reviews. We're going to go a little bit, or questions a little bit over time. What's the issue? So somebody said, we have an issue providing quality feedbacks. This comes from Kelly Barina. Quality responses to reviews that are short or don't say much. What tips do you have for responding to those reviews, or do you respond to those reviews, Matt?
Well, I would say be selective with the ones that you're responding to. I would venture to say that not all of them are super short. I don't typically like responding to a review if they just say like, great company, good experience. I'm not going to choose to respond to that. I'll go to the next most recent one that says something specific. If it's short and it says, you know, great experience, I love my team. Well, that's something specific. Now you can mirror that message and say, we're glad that you really love your team and have enjoyed working here at Malouf, or whatever your company is. So if there's something specific that you can mirror, then all of a sudden you have your content for a response.
Excellent. Jennifer Jensen says, do you have a resource for communicating results back to employees, and what's the best way to do that? We struggle here.
Well, that could vary a lot depending on the organization. I would just say you want to use the mechanisms that are already in place for communicating at your organization. Malouf, we have a standing weekly company meeting, so that's a really good venue for us. We also do company-wide email announcements, which is another good one for us. So I would say find or you probably already know the communication mechanisms that are in place, but a direct email is always good. You know, you could just give an update of, hey, you know, over the last 3 months, we've received X number of reviews, and here's a couple things that are changing based on feedback. You don't have to say everything. Like it gets overwhelming to employees. So you want to give them the highlights. They want to know that you're actually caring about the feedback and that you did something with it.
Excellent, Matt. Very, very true. Last question, I think, before my own. Jordan Evans asked really early, is there evidence that someone's perception of a product can be impacted even after they purchase the product? For example, you are pleased with the purchase, but later read negative reviews on the product and consequently feel less satisfied with your purchase. I will tell you this on the employee side, you know, this works both ways. If you have people that feel negative about their experience at the company, but they're being reinforced around them with a lot of positive sentiment shared in all hands meetings or whatever the case may be, typically that begins to reframe sometimes their mentality on the experience they're having at work, which is why we have built in a lot of sharing tools and feedback tools to focus internally on the retention of employees for companies and our clients. I think, right, and I know Jordan's looking for evidence. I think I can tell you that it does impact if I've had a positive experience and I start to feel the negativity around that and see that negativity, that is going to draw me down. Have you seen evidence of this, Matt?
100%. Yeah, we're not talking about a purchase funnel here. It's not like a one-way road where you go from, oh, I want to consider what to buy. I buy something, I use it, and then I'm happy or not happy, and it's the end. The internet's always on. People can go back and edit their reviews, and they can post updates. And so, yes, things can change. Now, when you talk about employer profiles, like Glassdoor, for example, you can only edit a review up to 30 days after posting it. So after that, it's locked in place, and not even the reviewer, the poster of the review can edit it. On Comparably, it's not quite that cemented. If someone goes on and edits their review, even 11 months later, as long as it's within that 1 year period, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Mike, but it will update the content. So
That's exactly
they posted a positive and now they hate their job because their manager yelled at them. That review is going to be replaced with a negative one. Or on the flip side, if they had a horrible experience and you have a pattern of having very good one-on-ones and you uncover this negative experience and you help resolve it with the employee, they may go back and update their negative review to be positive.
That's exactly how it works. Our sentiment is we want to have that most fresh data, right? And the most recent sentiment from employees, and critical to us, the other employee review sites, there could be 10 years of history that are still impacting your talent funnel today. Our focus is, can we get the most fresh data out to job seekers and reflective of the current company culture? Matt, this has been awesome. I have one last question. Brian Blotter asks, what's your favorite dad joke? I got to hear this before we go.
Oh man, I know Brian. I work with him at Malouf, so of course he would ask that. It would probably be this one. When does a corny joke become a dad joke?
I don't know.
When the punchline becomes apparent.
Excellent. That's a great way to end this segment during a time of, safety needed for all and social and business climate that is ever changing. Thank you all for joining me, Mike Sheridan, COO at Comparably, Matt Vance, Head of Employee Experience at Malouf. Go check out their profile on Comparably, and thank you all so much for joining us today. Thanks, Matt.